When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadabji, your podcast host, a practicing social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 70. The pressure cooker feeling on repeat and confidence contingent on a faulty narrative. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our courageous and daring guest, Rafiat Ahmed. Rafiat is intuitive, fearless, and wise, stretching individuals to take inspired action to create the life they never knew they could have through understanding their identity, intuition, impact, and influence. Rafiat leverages her unique field lessons to serve individuals who are on their pathways to self-discovery and healing from burnout and suffering from poor mental health experiences that hinder their life's fullest expression. After many challenges of her own, Rafiat lost her self-identity, which ultimately led her to discover her purpose and who she is today. She hosts a podcast called Follow Your First Mind and has established her very own coaching program, which is named Rafiat Ahmed Coaching, where she teaches clients how to trust their first minds. Rafiat's passions consists of faith, leadership, and especially teaching young people how to become powerful leaders. Well, hello, Rafiat. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Hello, hello. I'm so excited to be here, Salima. Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, Rafiat. I'm so happy that you're excited because I'm extremely excited as well, just to even
Yes.
have this opportunity to have you as a guest on the show. That's actually really important because it's guests like yourself that have so much to offer the audience, and for people to hear your story can inspire so many. And I'm really grateful that you have this willingness to be here today. I feel really blessed and just hope that we continue to have guests like yourself to come on the show and share their insights and inspirations and have the space to share what's needed. So I hope that I'm actually very excited to see what comes up in our conversation today. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I too, I will say in agreement with you. Um, I also hope that many more. Here's to 70 more amazing, amazing podcasts
I love
with
it.
amazing guests. Yeah.
Thank
For sure.
you. It really is important that, we take a stance together to help break barriers of mental stigma. So I have a lot of gratitude that you're here today. Okay, and in case you're still wondering, this podcast is really all about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And one thing that we know is that no matter the story, there is impact on one's own mental health in some way. And typically, it remains tucked away. And so this platform, it serves in a way to break barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So the beautiful thing about our conversation is today, together, you and I will be able to encourage people to share and tell what individuals typically have reservations to express. And of
Mm.
course, I continue to bring forward a trend. It's called the mental beauty rethink. Rafiat, I'm
Yes.
inching to learn about this perspective of yours. Please tell me what comes to mind
Mm.
first when you hear this phrase, the mental beauty rethink.
First thing that comes to mind is acceptance. Um,
Mm,
and I really love that phrase, the mental health beauty rethink. I think it, for me, just means accepting my mental health for what it is and where I am, right? And so I think there's a lot of beauty in that. And so I actually really, really love it.
oh, that's so nice. I've heard so many different insights and inspirations that people tell me when they share this. I think you're the first, I don't know if you're the first person, but at least the way you've articulated, you're mentioning a self acceptance of
Yeah.
where my mental health is at and where I am as a result of it. It's this opening of an experience, right?
Yes,
Mm.
yes. I really believe that life flows from you, with in tandem of life happening to you, right?
Hmm.
It's this harmony that kind of happens in co-creation. And so when you can accept your own mental health and, see the beauty in what you go through, you can make life beautiful as well, right? I think that's
Hmm.
kind of the point of life.
Yeah, for
So I
sure.
love it.
And
Yeah,
paying attention to the process. It
exactly.
doesn't have to be based on good or bad or right or wrong, just
Mhm.
what is.
Exactly. Oh man, I know we'll get into that a little bit later, but that's literally been,
Mm,
really
okay.
huge for me, is really understanding that it is what it is, and what it is doesn't mean that I am a bad person, or this is a bad thing, or I'm a good person, or that's a good thing, or it's just that's what happened.
Hmm.
Full period.
Yeah. No
We don't
judgment,
have to add
acceptance.
the other stuff.
Right. Yeah, exactly. No
Yeah,
judgment, just acceptance, right?
yeah, yeah.
This is just such a lovely take. Okay. I love it.
Nice.
All right, Rafiat, I'm,
Mhm.
you know, getting ready to get into that nitty gritty of your untold story. I hope you are too.
Yes.
Lovely, lovely. Okay, let's go for it. Okay, that first question, Rafiat, give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. How would it read?
Okay, so it would read, how owning my mental health journey has liberated me from financial shame.
Okay, let me see if I got it. How owning my mental health journey liberated me from financial shame. Can you give us a little teaser, a little inside scoop about what this means to you?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, a quick little what's about.
Mm-hmm.
I think the best way to put it for the listeners is, I've moved over 16 times in my life.
Whoa.
And yeah, it's been hectic, but through all it all, I've seen that, um, my finances was always kind of playing that part of the big bad villain, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for this.
Mm-hmm.
And really, what I realize now in this transformative journey in my life is how much making my finances a villain has really allowed me to fall deeper and deeper into a poor mental health experience, into depression and anxiety, even into suicidal ideation.
Mm.
And so, yeah, starting at a young age until now, just realizing that so much can happen.
Right.
So always, so much can happen.
Right.
So much can happen. And regardless of how much is layered on top, you can still be free.
Right. Okay, that's a lovely title and a really good preamble to just get right
Yeah.
into your untold story. So, Rafiat, tell us what your untold story is all about.
So I'm gonna pick a time, because my own Toy Story, as we spoke, it's really my whole life journey. But I want to
Mm-hmm.
really focus in on a time when I was about, I want to say I was 18 or 19. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I was 20 yet. And my family and I lived at the time with my mom, my sister. My parents were divorced recently, and I lived with my mom, and we decided to buy a home. However, prior to prior to purchasing this home, my mom actually fell really, really ill. In
Mhm.
terms, she had to leave work. She fell ill at work, and she was in the hospital for about 6 months or so. So I just want to set that up to show you, like, the main
Okay.
breadwinner of the household is ill, right?
Okay.
Um, so it can make sense. So we bought
Mhm.
this house because we knew how much my mom, she's from Jamaica, and coming to this country, one of her biggest dreams was that owning a home and being able to provide a home for her family. So we
Mhm.
decided to just, okay, even though she's sick, we're gonna go ahead and do this, right?
Mhm.
And so we did it. We bought the home. Things were going well for a while, and then they weren't, right? Slowly things were starting to just kind of fall apart financially. We weren't able to upkeep the payments of the mortgage and the other bills in the
Mhm.
home. And
Mhm.
about two, no, 3 years into buying that home, we had to make a decision, right? It
Mhm.
was either this house is going to be foreclosed, or we
Mhm.
need to sell it as quickly as possible,
Okay.
or come up with the money,
Okay.
right?
So Rafiat, before this, you've had similar, because you said you moved 16
Yes,
times in your life. So
yes,
that goes with the
yes,
assumption that prior to this, at age
yes.
18, and 2 to 3 years, during this time period, before
Yeah.
that, you had some
Yeah.
moves as well,
Yeah.
and
So the
unexpected
first
moves.
move, yeah. So the first move was an expected one. That one was happy. We moved. We grew up in a low income neighborhood
Mm-hmm.
in the west end of Toronto. We were just so excited. Like, yes, what's that? We're
Mm-hmm.
moving on up.
Right.
That
Mm-hmm.
whole,
Mm-hmm.
air of celebration.
Yeah.
We moved into a home in Mississauga. And at the time, my parents were still together. My father was supposed to be looking after the mortgage, and my mom the other expenses in the home.
Mm-hmm.
After about 4 years, we come to find out that, oh no, he hasn't been paying the mortgage,
Oh.
and now we have to leave, or we have to sell, sorry, or it's gonna be foreclosed.
Mm.
And so that was very difficult for me, because at that time I believe I was about 13,
Okay.
no, 14.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I was in grade 9. And it was hard because as a young girl, one, I just moved to the new city, right?
Right.
I was in Toronto, as I said,
Right.
so it was adjustment in itself,
Mm-hmm.
being in like a very suburbia neighborhood, like
Right.
first, when they just broke ground kind of areas.
Mm-hmm.
um, but it was really hard for me because I started looking at finances as I said, the villain. That's when it
Right.
really started becoming like, okay, if we can just have the money, if money in my family just worked out, then we wouldn't be going through these problems.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, at the time, I will mention as well, is when my mom decided to leave my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And for prior to that, I thought everything was fine. I
You
was
were just
definitely
living your
living
life. Right.
a, yeah, a
Mm-hmm.
sheltered
Right.
life. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, come to find out, kind of that rug was pulled from underneath me.
So that must have been
Um,
shocking as well, right? Because
yeah,
you had no idea. You were just
yeah,
being a teenager, doing your thing, and your parents were doing
exactly.
theirs, and you all of that
Exactly.
information would have come at a big
Yeah.
surprise and shock.
It truly was. I didn't know how to process it. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's part of the reason why I'm so passionate about young people today.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the age I didn't know, I just started watching TV. Like that was my outlet. I ate,
Mm-hmm.
I watched TV. I don't know if we could talk about this on here, but I self pleasured. I realized that was a thing, and that's what I did to cope. And I started thinking about, okay, how can I start making this work for myself? Like, how can I contribute to family? How can I contribute to life so then my parents didn't have to be so stressed, or didn't have to, you know, I started taking some ownership of my life.
What it really sounds like, though, is that you were trying to figure out how to save your family and how to fix it all.
Yeah, in my mind,
Yeah.
in my mind at that time, I
Mm-hmm.
really thought that,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I could try to, get a job and contribute some way so then
Mm-hmm.
they don't have to have so much pressure.
Mm-hmm.
um, Even though I'm the youngest of the family, right? My sister is older
Yes.
than I, and she was also working and helping and things like that. But I just felt like, okay, maybe this is happening because I wasn't working, or I
Mm.
wasn't doing enough,
That's a lot
right?
of pressure you put on yourself.
I did because
Mm-hmm.
I think now what I know about myself is I was a little bit of a perfectionist,
Mm-hmm.
and wanting things to be just right. And
Right.
so, how do I, in my worldview, make things just right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I try to do what I can.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I did things, as I got older. As I said, we moved and they'd separated. We got an apartment at the time, and then we bought the house. And those feelings just exasperated, right? Like now my father's not here, and so now I have to step up, right? I have to try my best to alleviate the stress off my mom. As I said, she got sick, so I was just trying my best to do what I could. And I remember I was actually just sharing this with her last night. I was telling her that I remember I was probably 18 at the time,
Mm-hmm.
looking into medical clinics, that medical trials that
Right.
pay you a certain amount for doing, trying pharmaceutical drugs that are not,
Mm-hmm.
finished being tested.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, there's a risk because they're not finished being tested. You are the test.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and I was still willing to do it because I wanted to do whatever I could that was still in the realm of quote unquote ethical or legal. I told you I grew up in a low income neighborhood, so
Mm-hmm.
I was around illegal activity growing up
Right.
somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
So I understood what that looked like. I've knew friends and even family who has gotten in trouble with the law, so
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to go that route.
Right. So you didn't want to go
Um,
down that path, but it
mm.
also seemed like, okay, how do I take this to the furthest extreme that I can to
Exactly, exactly.
control the
Exactly.
situation and further put pressure
Quickly.
on yourself to the
Yes.
nth degree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I really
Mm-hmm.
thought like, okay, if I was contributing, then I can, I could do something here.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because I also at the time I worked for the city of Toronto, which is at the time it was like I felt like I was supposed to be making good money. I was supposed to be doing all these things and supposed to be.
Right.
And so
Right.
I thought I really could do more and I should be able to do more. Really telling myself, giving myself a lot of obligation and responsibility, trying to control the way my family was living or the
Mm-hmm.
trajectory, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
that my family was going down. Um, so I really, a part of that story is I tried to do the trial. And I remember being on the bus heading into, at this time I was a little bit older, I was going to York.
Okay.
Um, I must have been 19 because now first year in college, I was that too, well, university. And I was like, okay, what can I do? And I remember being on the bus and heading to class and getting the call from the clinic and them telling me that I can't do it because my BMI, body mass index, was too high for my height.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just like bawling and trying to reason with them and trying to explain to them, like, no, it's okay. I just have big boobs and I just have like a big, like I just my body shape,
Right.
like I have nice big thighs. Like I'm just that kind of girl, like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
really
Mm-hmm.
trying to let them know that, don't listen to what your paper says. Listen
Right.
to me.
You just were
Um,
that desperate to have the
yeah,
control, and it
yes,
was a desperate measure, right? Like you
yeah.
must have been
Because time
feeling
was going.
desperation. Right. Time was
Exactly.
limited for you.
Time was limited. We had to get this money in time,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's how it works. You have to be able to sell your house in time or pay this by this certain time, right?
Right.
Or the bank is going to take action. That's just what they do.
That's a lot of
Um,
emotional upheaval that was probably
oh gosh.
entangled in all of that thought process
Do
too,
you
right?
see? Yeah. And as I said, I wasn't coping with it the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
Since the
Mm-hmm.
time it first happened when I was a younger teenager, I
Mm-hmm.
was using those other forms to cope. And so I just continued. I never actually spoke to anybody about what I was going through or what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would tell my friends, like, yeah, this happened. They'd be like, oh, it's okay.
Right.
You'll be okay. Um,
But they might not have
but
understood the extent of it either.
exactly, exactly. And, I didn't really expect them to because at the time the big shift for me when moving to Mississauga was, or I guess the perception I had was these people don't really understand what it's like to have to be in low income. So that was my, I guess, lens, my bias that I came in with. So I didn't think my friends would really even understand what I was going through.
Right.
I don't know if that's true, but that's what it was at the
But
time.
that's kind of what you were experiencing, or how you
Yeah.
felt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. So tell
One of
me
the
about,
big catalysts.
yeah, I mean, so you just about to mention the word catalyst. So I was going to ask you, what were some of the narratives that kind of were in your mind that kind of kept you going in this cycle? I mean, I know some of
Mhm.
them had faulty patterns, but can
Yeah.
you shed light to what some of those were?
Yeah. I really like one of the biggest ones was if I can just, get my money together. If I can just get myself together around money, then everything would be fine, right? Like if I can just earn enough, like if I can just understand it, if I can just, be able to save enough, if I can, everything is I'm not enough essentially,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whatever I do is not enough. So that was a really big one. A second one was that I just was not smart enough. I wasn't capable enough to fix this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did, over and above to try to fix things
Mm-hmm. Of
and various areas, like, these things lead into other things in your life.
course. Of course.
Um, so, yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest ones.
What about your mindset with money?
At the time, I think it was really, it was. I would say it was probably like a double-edged sword
Mm-hmm.
because at the time I worked in recreation and I was a coordinator of a few programs. And so I made more money than typical. So I
Mm-hmm.
made good money, quote unquote. So I love to see my paycheck when it arrived. But at the same time, by the Saturday, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, no, like what happened? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
it would then just quickly turn to an experience where I couldn't stand looking at my bank account. I couldn't stand looking at my money. I couldn't understand what's happening. Why is it that I could never make it for someone who makes quote unquote good money? Why can't I make it to the next pay period?
Mm-hmm.
Like this doesn't make any sense, right? I
Mm-hmm.
would, do all the stuff, the budgets, the books, the videos, the everything, everything to try to figure it out. And yet it still wouldn't work for me. So I think my mindset around it was like I am the problem.
Wow, that's very intense, right? So you're basically
Yeah.
saying, I can make it, but I can't keep it. So what's not
Yeah.
working? It must be me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Because mind you, as a coordinator, I deal with budgets. I can
Right.
do budgets
Mm-hmm.
for the programs. So
Right.
why is it that I can't do
Right.
this
So
in
you're
my
like, I
own life,
understand all
right?
of this. I do this
Yeah.
day in and day out. I got this for
Yes.
others.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
right. Because obviously the background, the history, it's growing up, money doesn't grow on trees and we don't have money for that. And those are things playing in the background too,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. And I think
Yeah.
also a few minutes ago when we were just talking about you going to like the nth degree to like do what you needed to do in whatever way you could
Hmm.
to earn that money, you might have had that as like a pattern too, right? Do what's
Yeah.
necessary to have
Oh,
money. And
yes.
oh,
Yes.
the root of all
By
negative
any
stuff must
means.
be related,
Yeah.
here. And,
Yeah.
all the negative stuff that happens is because of money. Like, did you ever think like
Yes.
that as well?
Yes, yes. Thank you for hearing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely everything bad that happened because as I said, although I moved 16 times and all of them were not negative, the majority of them were.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think in my mind I just now looked at money as this thing that just gobbles up my dreams.
Mm.
Right? Like I was always a big dreamer, always a person who knew I would be great somehow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yet I can't get anywhere because of this money, right? I can't do the things I want to do because of this money, right? Um,
Obstacle. It was your big
yeah, right.
obstacle, the common
Yeah,
denominator obstacle. And that's
yeah.
the narrative that you had. And you
Yeah.
mentioned that, you didn't speak to anyone about this when you were going through all of these things and you were coping and you weren't expecting friends to understand when you would share a few things. But
Mhm.
I'm curious, did you just show up happy and, on the outside just kind of go with the flow and not let people really
Oh,
in?
yes.
So like was it like a different like experience on the inside?
Yeah, yeah. I was very much so I'm an extrovert, introvert, so very much the life of the party, get everybody together. Um, oh, the good girl, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I grew up also with that narrative, I should say. I was very much the good girl, the one who's obedient. So I was always the person who did what was expected of me,
Mm-hmm.
but inside, very sad, very angry, actually. And I think that I took it out on
Mm-hmm.
my mom for a lot of years.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have a great relationship. We've been able to work through a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but I was very angry with her because I really blamed her as well. Like years before we had to sell it, me and my sister wanted to sell it. There was many times where we're like, listen, this is not working.
Right.
Let's cut our losses and go. And
Mm-hmm.
at the time she was holding very tightly to her dream. And I had a lot of unforgiveness And so it came up as resentment, bitter, anger, anger towards even like my friends. Like they had, parents who were able to give them things. Like I remember my friend, her grade 12 graduation, her dad gave her a car. And I remember being so upset that, wow,
Mhm.
I'm mad at him for being a good dad. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Mhm.
how dare he,
Mhm.
provide for
Mhm.
his kids?
Right.
So that was pretty much underneath it. And it would be expressed itself in various forms. If I got mad about something, then you would see it.
Right.
Um, I wasn't a fighter, but I would make your life really, really hard. I could become very, very vindictive. Um, so I tried my best not to go that far.
Mhm.
Um, I try my best to even push anger underneath the surface because in my household, anger wasn't an acceptable emotion either.
Mhm.
So it was a lot of trying to bottle it up
Mhm.
and just continue.
Right. And so then you very much for sure was like you were a different person on the inside
Yeah.
than outside. And, you know, I can't imagine what that was like for you as you actually were going through all of those different aspects, right? Like there's just so much that you endured and nowhere to turn. You were also mentioning something about, doing that good girl thing, that being
Yeah.
obedient and doing what's expected of you. And
Yeah.
it also sounds like there's a part of you that had this story conditioned that you also had some of your own ideas of what was expected of you, but they might have been your own expectations unknowingly.
Hmm.
And that,
Yeah, I had to succeed.
yeah.
There was no two ways about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like to me, success, I knew from a young age that I wanted to be in business. So that's all I kind of really focused on, but every time I tried to be in business some way or another, it didn't quite work out.
Mm-hmm.
Um so I or in my mind it didn't work out, I'll say. Um so I felt like I had this undue pressure of, okay, I just need to prove to everyone that I can do this on top of whatever they're telling me they feel like I should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because it's like, Raf, you're good at this, you should be doing that. Like I was growing up here, French is our second language, and so I was in French immersion, and so that was my identity for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
being the Frenchie, the French one.
Right.
So there was an expectation
All
that
these expectations. Right.
I had to be good and great at what I did,
Mm-hmm.
good at school, good job, good, just everything has to be good because my parents already poured so much into me by making me learn a second language in
Right.
itself. I feel like I just wanted to be grown because I felt like if I can just
Mm-hmm.
be grown, I would do life better than
Right.
everyone trying to tell me they could do life,
Mm-hmm.
trying to tell me what I can do
Yeah.
or what I should be doing. I
Mm-hmm.
always was a person who wanted to walk to my own drum, but just not being able to do that because of the conditioning of having to be a good girl,
Right.
having to be the girl who was always happy. Like I was pretty
Mm-hmm.
much a happy child, and so that's expected. So I wasn't really ever allowed to show emotions of, as I said, anger or bitter, even
Well, and
sadness.
was it really that you weren't allowed to show them, or that they wouldn't
Mhm.
be received well if if you expressed a different emotion?
Yeah, yeah, it wouldn't be received well.
Mm.
Um,
And so, because of
yeah,
that, you then told yourself, I don't have permission to do this. I'm not allowed to do this.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Well, look at that. Another narrative.
Yeah, and it just showed up differently in
Mm-hmm.
different, like
Yeah.
looking back, I can see that how that showed up in relationships and
Mm-hmm.
like romantic relationships. I can see how that showed up in friendships. I can see how
Yeah.
that showed up
All
in
across
work
the
relationships. Yeah,
spectrum of your life in different
yeah,
facets.
yeah.
Can you unpack for me this idea of confidence, your
Mhm.
confidence being contingent to your financial success? Can you say
Mm.
more about that?
Yeah, because as I said earlier, working for the city, I had this air of higher than thou.
Mm-hmm.
Like I did well for myself. I have this good job. I'm making good money, and like I put a lot of confidence on the external,
Mm-hmm.
and being a person, I'll even say like pretty privileged, right? Like I knew I was an attractive person, and
Mm-hmm.
so I really utilized these things,
Mm-hmm.
but I never really felt deep down inside. Um, well, I can't say that because I thought I was confident. Like I thought I was confident through and through until life showed me that
Mm-hmm.
not so much, baby girl.
Mm-hmm.
We got some
Mm-hmm.
work to do here. But I put a lot of because I put my confidence in the external so much. Once the external things start getting taken away, you know, there also went my confidence
Mm-hmm.
in who I am.
Well, because I think when I hear you talk about that, it reminds me of like when we're looking at self esteem, right? So, self
Mhm.
esteem is very much something that can only be measured by those external markers. And so, if we're relying on external validation, which sounds like you were from what you're
Mhm.
sharing, is that the self esteem will also bounce up and down dependent on like if it's if you're being recognized, if you're getting that award, if you're getting the high five,
Yes.
you're getting that recognition, then your esteem builds.
Yes.
And I think that's what you're trying to tell me is that all those external factors is where your emphasis was.
Yes.
And you probably didn't develop any of those finer skills of showing yourself or learning how to apply compassion towards yourself.
Oh no. That
And
was all very
right,
recent.
right. And the self compassion, when we give ourselves that self love and that compassion, that's
Mhm.
what actually ignites the inner confidence.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with your esteem at that
Yeah.
point because your
Yeah.
confidence becomes solid.
Yeah. I'm definitely someone who is more grounded now because
Mm-hmm.
of my journey. If I
Yes.
can go a little bit into that.
Yes.
Um, yeah. So, before I left that job, my last full time with the city, I was a youth outreach worker. Love the job, love working with youth, but I couldn't stand the workplace environment. But I
Mm-hmm.
loved the thrill that it gave, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just setting the stage with that one. At the same time, I felt because of that work environment, I started to really experience a lot of anxiety. Um, and then at the same time, I'm in a relationship which now looking back, I see it as emotionally abusive. And I'm like, wow, so that's playing at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
coupled with, as I said, this is all a part of the 16 moves are all
Mm-hmm.
happening at
Mm-hmm.
the same time,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's a lot of instability happening. So I was really losing myself, really becoming very depressed. I was a high functioning depressed person, meaning, at work, nobody knew, unless you're very close to me,
Right.
meaning like my sister.
Mm-hmm.
You really didn't know what I was truly feeling on the inside. Even that partner I tried to share didn't quite work.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to seek help with a therapist at the time, but it didn't we didn't mesh. You know what I mean?
Right.
She suggested antidepressants, and I flipped out. Like I completely went into denial. I was like,
Mm.
no
Mm-hmm.
way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I was thinking about suicide, and I was, thinking about, okay, maybe if I don't commit suicide, but maybe, if I just, get into a car accident, what if I just get hurt, and then I can just be off. Then I can just, like the thoughts start to get really, really concerning, right? Um, and that's when I really started to have pause with myself and really start to look at, okay, Raf, what's happening here? These
Mm-hmm.
thoughts are happening a lot
Mm-hmm.
more often. Um,
Right.
and I didn't know much about law of attraction and spirit and intuition then, but what I knew was if I keep thinking these things, I might call this into my life.
Right. You had that at
That's
least that
somehow,
reality check
yeah,
moment where you're like,
something,
I've got to, venture on
yeah,
a different path. I've got to try something new. That
yeah,
whatever this thought process that I'm down,
yeah, I
it could make
definitely,
me doomed. Like you were kind of
yeah,
wondering that. Okay.
yeah. I was driving on the
Mm-hmm.
401 just really, and I think it was literally a divine moment. And that was just super clear. It was just like, bro, if you keep thinking this might happen, you know?
Mm.
Um, and I was like, okay, okay. Um, so I, at the time, I really started to feel hopeful, but not very. Like it was still very clouded, right? I
But
was
there was like
hopeful
a
in this
glimmer or a
a
sparkle of
glimmer.
something for
Yes,
you
there
to
was
kind of
something I
hold
couldn't
on to because it was
yes,
something new.
Yes, it was something new. That's a
Mhm.
perfect way to put it. It was
Mhm.
something new. And then at the time, this is December. So at the time, this is probably happening for 4 years.
Mm.
Um, and at 2018 December, my eldest brother passes away,
Oh, I'm so
and it's
sorry to hear
jarring.
about that. That must
Thank
have
you.
been so jarring.
Yeah, it was jarring because it was
Mhm.
very sudden. And this is when the thoughts are very prominent in my head, and I'm thinking to myself as he's being lowered into the ground.
Mhm.
I'm thinking to myself, this is what you want. This is what you're
Mm.
asking for,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Looking around at the people around us and feeling the grief, you know. Um, it really was an eye opener for me. Um, but I wish I can say I changed everything then, but I didn't. It still took a year. Um, but it was that little glimmer of hope was starting to shine a little bit brighter. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Mhm.
It was starting to make me question the way I was thinking, my reality, my perception, trying to question the relationship. What's really
Mhm.
happening here?
Mhm.
Why am I allowing
Mhm.
this to happen? You know,
Right.
at the time.
So you were really
So,
starting to become more open and curious, and you were really investigating from a place of fact and truth,
yes, yes, seeking the truth, right? Really seeking the
seeking
truth.
the
Like, what
truth.
is actually happening
Mhm.
here?
Mhm.
Um, I know this is my life. I know I have one life, but I don't understand what's happening in the life,
Right. But it's so great to
um,
hear that you really got to that reflective place and
yes.
really examined it in
Yeah.
detail.
I was actually very grateful for that because I don't know. I don't know. You know, actually, I do. This is what happened. So the following year, my sister came to my house. I lived with my partner at the time, the ex at the time. It was Christmas time, December again, and she showed up with a black eye. And I'm sharing the story because she knows we spoke about this. She allowed me to share this story.
Okay.
Um, she shares it on her own pages as well. And she showed up with a black eye, and I was completely floored because I didn't realize that her relationship was physically abusive. I knew he was not treating her well,
Mhm.
but didn't realize it was to this extent. And when we sat in my kitchen, she's telling me how she's feeling, and she's telling me about what's been going on.
Mhm.
All I'm hearing is myself, and yet
You could,
my situation
yeah,
doesn't look like hers. You know what I mean?
right. But somehow it was all resonating, and it
Exactly.
was that your sister's black eye
Yeah.
was your eye opener.
Exactly. I couldn't look, I couldn't unknow it anymore. So
Mhm.
that really started for me the deepening of the questions, the
Mhm.
deepening of like, okay, hold on a second.
Mhm.
Is this where my life's going?
Mhm.
Or
So
am I
that
going to take my
really
own life? Like,
planted the
these are the,
seeds for
yes,
that
yes.
deeper reflective processing that
Yeah.
you started to
It's like,
engage
okay.
with.
Yeah. It's like,
Okay.
okay, really, Rafiat, right?
Mhm.
So then
And that's how you
um,
ended on that journey of really seeking your truth and discovering
yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, who am I? End
Mhm.
up leaving that relationship and really asking, who am I? Right? Like, I'm always searching
Mhm.
for purpose and this
Mhm.
greatness. And, it was just like a divine intervention. And the question came in, well, like, who are you? How are you going to know what you're going to do in this life if you don't
Mm.
know who you are?
Right.
So I realized, oh, I'm asking the wrong question. And so I had to go back and
Mhm.
really sitting down with my creator and really just meditating on
Mhm.
asking questions about what I mean by meditation. I mean, like, asking questions, listening for answers. Um, Really coming into like, what is my identity, what am I here for, and how does my creator speak to me so I can know the answers as they're coming to me.
Sure.
And that kind of started this whole journey now since then of kind of picking up the pieces and understanding that mental health is a part of my journey. Right, I understood when I was feeling depressed and feeling very anxious that I was actually the emotion that I was able to identify after leaving was I was numb. I was actually very numb in my life. I'd kind of created this like shell around my heart. So I didn't actually feel
Mhm.
anymore. I
Mhm.
became so cold of a
Mhm.
person,
Mhm.
so outside of myself. And that's when I realized, oh, Rafiat, you're not yourself. Like the little girl that my mom knows is not here anymore.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and so we need to look at what's happening here.
Mhm.
Um, And so yeah, it started me on a quest of those get those questions being answered and really understanding, okay, how do I come into presence? My peace became my priority in my life and my kind of like a barometer. If my peace is off, something's off, I need to start paying attention, right?
Yeah.
um, this has kind of, allowed me to start to really have compassion and grace towards my own mental health journey, and be okay with, yeah, I went through those things, yes, I experienced those things.
Right.
But it is because, that's what happened in my life. But
Right.
also understanding this is how my brain is working now,
Mm-hmm.
right? My brain is used to taking that, it's like a highway, my brain is used to taking
Yes.
that highway, and now I
Mm-hmm.
want to create this path on the left. And
Right.
so I gotta consciously, walk that path and give
Yes.
myself grace, because it wants to take the highway. It's a computer. It's
Yes.
used to
Yes.
taking the
Right.
efficient
You're
route,
and so you're
right?
manually rewiring, right?
Exactly.
So that sounds
Exactly.
like it was such a pivoting time for you.
Yes. So
And
very. So
yeah.
very.
And so, Rafiat, like when people come to see me for therapy, individuals, typically they're in one of three places. Some people are getting started. Some people, when I say getting started, meaning like they're coming in with a whole, slew of things that they want to explore or unpack, or they know that there's something they need to explore and unpack but don't know how to get started in that way. Some people are in the middle. There's maybe something acute they're experiencing, or they're navigating, they're in the thick of something intense maybe. And some people are looking back, and looking back meaning maybe they're looking for closure, or they're trying to make sense and process some things so they can move forward in life. But no matter what I see, they usually fall into these kind of three areas. So for yourself, what part of your journey would you say that you're in? Um, would you say that you're getting started, in the middle, or looking back in terms of your untold story?
I would say I'm looking back. Like, okay, it's kind of the two-parter. I say I'm looking back because I'm trying to use, my whole thing is gaining the wisdom from what I have gone through.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I need help, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I have a therapist today that helps me to kind of look back and see,
Mm-hmm.
and pull out the gems of what's happening. But I say the second part, uh, for me is, it's kind of like a maintenance. I don't know if I don't know if that makes sense to you, but
Mm-hmm.
like, yes, I'm
Mm-hmm.
here on the other side, but it's almost like a maintenance as well. Just like you get an oil change in your car,
Yes.
like you need a
It's
tune up,
like hygiene. You
right?
don't just do it once, right? Like you got to keep going.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what I would say.
Okay. But yeah, I guess not I guess it's your take, but it sounds like from how you're explaining it, it is two parts of looking back, right? There's
Yes.
I get it. And okay. And so you've already shared quite a bit about how your mental health specifically was impacted, right? You talked to me about, you've shared quite openly about, going into a depressive state, and experiencing abuse of different kinds, and, you know, the financial strain and the impact and the thought process. And I'm just wondering if there's anything about your mental health impact that you experienced that you haven't shared yet. Like, I mean, I know you even shared openly about, suicidal ideation and having a plan, or just even fleeting thoughts of, what would it be like if, this car just kind of ended up here? Or, there was so many different things that you shared. And I have a lot of respect and gratitude that you could do that. I'm very humbled that you shared such vulnerability. I'm just curious if there was anything else about this area that you may want to share a little bit more of, or if anything got left behind.
Um, what comes to mind when you ask that is anxiety. I think the one thing I wanted to share
Mm.
is that, I didn't realize, you know, that I was a person when living with anxiety for such a long time.
So, what did it look like for you? If you're saying that you experienced anxiety,
Yeah,
what did that look like for you?
it
How did
was
it
really
manifest?
yeah, it manifested as rumination, and
Mm.
just really like picking apart conversations with people, and really just like, oh no, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, I should have said this. Oh my gosh, why did I do this? Um,
So
really just stewing
rumination
over
is
things.
you're
Mhm.
just dwelling on thoughts. Your thoughts are
Yes.
on repeat, and then you're being
Mhm.
hard on yourself. You've got the self doubt
Exactly.
and self, or
Yeah.
the inner
It's almost
critic.
loathing. it's almost loathing. Like I wouldn't even
Mm.
say it's just doubt, it was loathing. Like it was becoming really a hatred of why I did things. Why did you have to do this? It's really, I had like, as you said before, I used to be
Okay,
by
so
any
that's
means
like not even,
necessary,
yeah, so
right?
self-doubt
So
is
it's
a
the
low
same,
level.
it's the same. Yeah, it was like
You
the
know, so
same, but like it's completely directed
right.
internally now.
So it's like even a step above inner critic,
Yeah,
right? Because you're not
yeah,
just criticizing yourself, you're hating on yourself. So to
yeah.
me, that's like there was self-shaming going on
Yes,
and
big
self
time. I
like
should have had it
rage on
together by
self. Like you're
now.
now, and so
Yeah,
because you're shaming yourself, now you're angry with yourself.
yeah. Why am I here? Why didn't things not working out before?
Questioning. Right.
Everything,
Okay.
everything. You know, that perfectionist in me was like, you should have had it together by now.
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Should have
but
had it together by
yeah,
now. Holy smokes.
yeah, yeah. But like as I was saying, like owning my mental health has helped me to understand that like this is just how I processed at the time. I
Mm-hmm.
give myself a lot of grace, and I look back and I say, like, that girl made the best decisions that she could at that
Yeah,
time, right?
exactly. With all
Um,
the knowledge and information that you had,
that's it.
which you might not have, like the stuff you know now, you might not have had then. So
Exactly.
with what you were working with, you could give yourself some grace.
Yeah. So
That's beautiful.
that's been really big for me.
Yeah. Okay. That is huge. So, given that you can start seeing your pivots and things that you were shifting and what you were being intentional and more conscious at, doing with conscious awareness, what would you want your key message to the listeners of the show be? What would you want them to know?
I would want them to know two things come to mind. One, to be curious about yourself. It's okay to question your thoughts with love, but also like it's okay if you're not okay. Like I know it's very
Mm-hmm.
cliche nowadays, but like I just never gave myself permission to not be okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, always pushing, always going through. Um, but if I understood then that it's okay to feel the way I was feeling, I
Mm-hmm.
think I would have given myself a little space, and in that space, I could have figured out, um, better course of actions. Hopefully, anyways.
Right. Yeah, but the it's okay if you're not okay is permission to feel.
Yeah, yeah,
And when you have permission to feel, you're actually able to check in with yourself
yeah.
and pay attention to your internal process.
Because there's so much wisdom on the inside. Like I really believe we got everything we need,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that we're so intelligent. Like as beings, we're so intelligent. We have a capacity for so much, yet we're well, for me, anyways, I was the most scared of spending time with myself. So
Mm-hmm.
how can I allow myself to feel if I don't even want to spend, outside of sleep or doing, you're just always
Right.
occupied by something, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so, yeah, really learning like part of my journey is like, yeah, it's okay to be with my thoughts. It's okay to be with me. How am I feeling right now? Or
Right.
even sensations, what am I
Yeah.
actually, in my body feeling
Mm-hmm.
right now? Spiritually or energetically, what am I feeling right now?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Those are really great words of wisdom. Thank you. So, Rafiat, I'm curious about what is your game changer inspiration that's close to you that reflects your untold story? Is there like a mantra or like an inspirational quote or book or a person or even an event that really spoke to you that helped you? I know you mentioned when your sister came to your door with the black eye
Hmm.
that was a very pivotal moment for you for your self-realization, but
Hmm.
maybe just was there anything that gave you encouragement or motivation or something that really helped you anchor into the direction that you were able to get to or get into?
For me, it's my faith. Like, I believe that there's a creator bigger than I. And so when I am feeling, thrown with the wind and I'm, all over the place, I anchor in the fact that there is a higher power out there that knows the plan and the way for me. And so even if it looks cloudy to me, I call him a he
Mm-hmm.
knows where I'm going, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so if I tap into him, if I get back close, um, if I can just silence a little bit and hear, because he's also in me, then I can kind of get to where I'm going. So that's a very big inspiration for me, to just to
Just
keep
keep your
going.
faith, and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
kept
keep going.
believing, and you keep believing.
Yeah, because that's what it was, right? I
Mm-hmm.
realize now that all of this with the mental health, it's belief, right? It has been a battle
Mm-hmm.
of my mind. It has been a battle of my heart,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if I can continue to hold on true to me, then I'll be okay, you know?
Right.
Yeah,
Awesome. So then, what's a cause or an organization that's been impactful to you on your journey that you would like to give a shout out to?
for sure. I'm going to shout out Toy and Crandall Coaching, because when I first left that relationship and, things were crazy, I decided to jump in and take this coaching program, and it was about your money mindset, because
Mm-hmm.
as I said, I thought everything, if I could just get my money
Right.
together,
Exactly.
right? But what I learned in the program was so much more, and
Mm-hmm.
um, it really gave me a structure and a permission to look within,
Right.
and learning, journaling, things like that through that program. But I really got to understand the feelings of being numb, which was huge for me, and being absent from my life. Um, so I always give them, they'll always hold a special place in my heart, because I realized then it was more than money, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was always just money, but then there is where I realized, oh no, there's a root system happening underneath
Right.
with the surface.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's always more than just about money, and the sooner you come to that conclusion, the more connected you are to yourself. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So tell me the platforms. How can people connect with you if they would like to?
So I'm on Instagram,
Instagram. Where else?
Rafiat Ahmed underscore co.
Okay.
LinkedIn, I'm fresh on LinkedIn. So if you're on LinkedIn, I'm just dabbling over there,
You're
getting really
building.
excited.
You're building.
Yeah, building.
Okay. And you have a
My
website?
website, yeah, rafiatahmed.com.
Okay.
And then my podcast, Follow Your First Mind, is where you can connect with me.
Amazing. That sounds lovely. So we actually have a show notes page. So if people go to daretoshare.co, your podcast episode 70 is right there. They click on your name or the episode number, and there's an entire page about you, and there are links to connect with you directly. So we'll make sure that these are all there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Honestly, Salima, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for facilitating, and really just holding space for me to share.
It honestly has been a genuine pleasure. And Rafiat, guess what?
What?
Hello, you've just dared yourself to share.
Yes.
Congrats. We went on to say thank you, and it's like, wait, you just did this.
Yeah, yeah, and this is
Amazing.
huge.
It's
Like
so big.
this is huge.
You just did some really big unveiling today. And honestly, Rafiat, I would like to just take a moment to express my gratitude for the story that you've so shared today. I am humbled. I mean, at any point for any person, speaking about money and finances is messy, and
Mhm.
it can be very uncomfortable. So to unpack your story where there was so much, like such an enmeshment of your mental well-being and being so heavily affected by the conditioning of financial success and all the mindset shifting that you've worked through, my
Yeah,
goodness, this can only encourage others to delayer their experiences and tap into their core work as well. So
I'm
I
hoping
am
so.
sitting here and I'm truly grateful to have been able to hear and witness your story today. So thank you for the deep conversation and for all the daring and sharing. This has been incredible.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. I hope so too. I hope that people can also be liberated,
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the day, money is just a tool for us to use, and it will amplify the good that's in your heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I hope that more people can use it and do good things.
And once again, Rafiat, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma. To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.